Today on the Italian Wine Podcast, we are joined by one of the most vibrant and influential voices in the wine space today, Pilar Brito. A storyteller, educator, and community builder, Pilar has carved out a unique space in the digital wine world with an approachable, unpretentious style and infectious enthusiasm. So our three key takeaways for today's episode. Number one, how to build authentic online community that can really translate into real life connections. Number two, what is the next generation and your followers specifically really looking for when it comes to wine experiences and events? And then finally, how can Italian wine category do a better job resonating with these new audiences? Hello, welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market with me, your host, Juliana Colangelo. This show has been designed to demystify the U.S. market for Italian wineries through interviews with experts in sales and distribution, social media, communications, and so much more. We will quiz each of our esteemed guests in every episode to solidify the lessons that we've learned from the episode. So sharpen your pencils, get out your notebooks, and join us this week to learn more about the U.S. market. Hello, welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market. Today on the Italian Wine Podcast, we are joined by one of the most vibrant and influential voices in the wine space today, Pilar Brito. A storyteller, educator, and community builder, Pilar has carved out a unique space in the digital wine world with an approachable, unpretentious style and infectious enthusiasm. Today, we'll talk about how she connects with consumers, what's resonating in the U.S. market, and some trends that the Italian wine industry can tap into to attract the next generation of wine lovers. Pilar, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for the very kind intro.
Of course. So for our listeners who might not already be familiar with you, tell us a little bit more about your journey into wine and what has brought you here today.
Yeah. So for those who don't know me, I'm a wine content creator. My full name is Pilar Brito, but my handle is Bar Pilar on Instagram, TikTok, and Substack. It's 2 R's at the end because I couldn't get the handle with 1 R. I'll work on it later because I think it is confusing to some people. I have about 150,000 community members across platforms, and I've been doing this for 1.5 years. The way I got started, I really didn't grow up in a wine drinking family at all. My mom doesn't drink, and my dad will occasionally, but pretty frugal in his wine spending. But we moved to Italy, actually, and Spain when I was a kid, so that started a love of travel and food. I was a French literature major in college, so it was kind of right there, ready for me when I wanted to expand into wine. But I really fell in love with it in law school. My law school had the very intense wine society that I'm happy to get into more if you like. But basically producers, importers would come every year and kind of show off their products or their portfolio with the idea of, okay, you guys are broke now, but you're about to have very good disposable income. Let's kind of get you on the train. It's very good marketing, actually. So the first tasting when I was a 1L in law school was Chateau Margaux. I fell completely in love with wine. So I joined the board of the Wine Society, started being the person kind of running the tastings, building relationships with producers, started doing my CMS certification, later switched to WSET, doing blind tasting competitions, etc. By the end of law school was I really would love to be in wine, but law school is very expensive. I just spent 3 years on this. I think I'd regret not being a lawyer. Moved to California, was a lawyer for 4 years, but in the meantime was, still doing my WSET certifications and doing as much in wine as I could. And in my, third, starting into my 4th year of being a lawyer, I felt okay, this actually has been great in many ways, but I've given it long enough. I still really want to be in wine. So let me figure out how to make the full transition. And that's when I started creating content and building this community.
Yeah, wow. What a cool story. And it started from, it sounds like your, experience living in Spain and Italy, but really from this wine club at your law school. Like you said, it's a great form of marketing. And I think that's something we can talk about as we get later into the episode and talking about connecting with next generation. So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit more specifically about the 150,000 followers that you have across your platforms and have started translating that into, IRL and real life events, communities, and connections. So our three key takeaways for today's episode. Number one, how to build authentic online community that can really translate into real life connections. Number two, what is the next generation and your followers specifically really looking for when it comes to wine experiences and events? And then finally, how can Italian wine category maybe do a better job perhaps of resonating with these new audiences? So to dive in, when you think about creating content around wine, what's your approach? How have you found that special structure to really keep your followers engaged and build such a great following in just 1.5 years?
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm going to be honest. The real reason I started creating content was a combination of, again, I used to be a venture capital and startup attorney, so I was seeing how a lot of my clients, especially like CPG clients, some of which were actually alcohol beverage companies, but plenty of which were like beauty and whatnot. I was seeing how they were using social media, and it sort of clicked with me how powerful it was and that I should learn it. But the main reason was I just couldn't break into the wine industry like I was trying to, and I was having no luck. I was trying so hard and it was just not going well. I was at that awkward, this is a separate topic, but basically, like, I think if I had been younger or if I had been much, much more experienced in something, there would have been a way. But everyone was like, you're 30, you have like, you're used to having an assistant at your law firm, you have like great experience in this other area, but no wine experience. And I can't like put you on the floor. I don't trust, like, if you were 22, sure. Like, it was just this really weird, like,
I actually think it's a really relevant topic, though, to our conversation because to attract next generation consumers, I firmly believe you need next generation people as leaders in the wine industry, whether that's as marketers, as somms, as wine industry professionals. So I actually think it's super relevant to the conversation and something, we can dive into a little bit more. But I think for our whole industry to be super cognizant of the fact that there's outside talent, people like yourself who might come from a different background, but are so passionate that it's important to think about ways to integrate people from other industries professionally, just for starters. So I'm really glad you found your way in through social media. So I'll let you get back to that story.
thank you. Totally. And it's not unique to the wine industry, but yeah, I think there should be more cross-pollination across every industry. And like lawyer might not be the most obvious one, but like, for example, beauty and fashion marketers are incredible. Like if the wine industry wants to pull more of that, and I think that would be great, but separate topic. So basically couldn't break in. And when I was looking at potentially creating content as a way to kind of help me break in and also just feed my passion in wine, I was looking at, what the wine content market currently looked like, or at the time. And I was kind of seeing that there was nothing that would have resonated with me at the moment when I was getting into wine or even currently. So basically, and nothing wrong with any of this, but basically there were kind of two extremes. There was typically this person that I call like the very dedicated hobbyist. So like 5 to 15,000 followers, doesn't really monetize their platform, is typically like lawyer, doctor, banker, can afford these sort of high ticket bottles. And they're posting, the bottle of Harlan that they're having on the weekends, and their other wine friends follow that and they just talk online. And it's awesome. I like it, but that doesn't do a lot for most people because it's just a photo of a bottle of wine. And on the other side, I was seeing sort of what I call like hyper accessibility, which is a little bit more volume driven. Again, absolutely nothing wrong with it, but sort of seemingly operating under the thesis of, okay, if you find wine intimidating, let me make it as accessible to you as possible. Let me
how to open a bottle. Here's how to hold like glass.
Yeah. Let me simplify the messaging. Let me tell you, like the very like high value, high bang for your buck kind of bottles you can get at Costco, whatever. Nothing wrong with either of those. But when I was starting to get into wine, I was 23, I had started law school, and it's not like I really had the money to buy great wine at the time, or knew much. I was really a complete beginner, but I saw myself as entering into this new era of a more sophisticated adult lifestyle. And I saw wine as an extension of that and a way to express that and a way to experience that. So I didn't want anyone to take the aspirational quality out of it. I just wanted to kind of be brought along for the ride. And so I don't want anyone to tell me, you can't afford this. So let me give you the thing you can afford. I wanted someone to be like, okay, but you're going to be able to in 2 years or whatever. So,
and these are the producers you should know, right? And start being familiar with. Because also there's sometimes great finds and great values on wine lists you never know at older vintages, or you might be just at the right place at the right time. And like you had mentioned before, you were getting access to some of these producers through your law school wine club anyway.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of, younger professional people, especially like not, most of us at this point in the way society's progressed don't have kids or anything. Like, it's not like we have a ton of free time outside of our jobs, but enough to like dedicate a little bit of time to a hobby. So the idea that wine was actually something that took a little bit of effort and a little bit of study and sort of rewarded that extra effort was actually something that was very appealing to me. So I wanted there to be a bit of a barrier to entry. I just wanted to be on the other side of that barrier, one of the people on the other side of that barrier. So that was kind of how I was looking at it. And I didn't see anything that was speaking to that kind of person.
Right.
So that's kind of been my approach to content the entire time. It's not super technical. I do some things that are, like what is alcohol, body tanning, whatever. But I think most people in the sort of psychographic that I'm targeting, which I think I deeply understand because I was and still am that same psychographic. I think it's more about how to have wine be an extension of your sophisticated lifestyle and how to integrate it into your lifestyle in an exciting way.
Yeah. And I think that's such a foundational part of marketing, right? People purchase and invest in brands that they feel like are a reflection of themselves. Like we see what we buy, what we wear, what we drink, what we eat as part of ourselves. And I think especially millennial and younger generations, even more so than perhaps generations prior. So tell us a little bit about how you've taken that lens of like, let's say this more like middle ground approach, someone who wants to get into wine in a more serious way, but is still newer to the category. What kind of content series, what kind of content did you start creating and are you creating now that's really speaking to that audience?
Yeah, totally. And I would say it's a middle ground in terms of approach, but it's actually, I don't want to call it a higher ground because that sounds like a ethical question, but it is like a more elite approach to it. And I think it's a middle ground in terms of like, bringing people along for the ride, not expecting baseline level of knowledge, greeting them with warmth, making everyone feel like they can be included in this. But the way I'm approaching wine is still from honestly a pretty elitist perspective because that's what I would have wanted. And it is, what I continue to want. I think when you take the aspirational quality out of an aspirational product, especially like this one, you're just left with alcohol. So, I mean, I try to do content that just plays off of that and could relate to my community's lifestyle, which again, I understand having been a lawyer as much as possible. So a lot of the content that has really resonated has either been around wines for business dinners, like what wine to bring your investor. If you're, at a table and you're tasked with ordering the wine for a bunch of clients at a fancy dinner, how do you think about it? And I think that resonates both because there's this kind of aspirational quality of like, it's like how this aspirational lifestyle of being professional and high earning and global and wine being a part of that. But I also think it's just practical. I think a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, get into these high earning jobs and maybe don't have, the same resources some people had growing up and they don't know what to do and they want to feel more comfortable. And personally, it really did help me in my career quite a bit, actually. It genuinely was very helpful.
Like it's something like, you can apply to your real life. And I hear all the time, people are turning to social media more and more for tips, recipes, advice, things that they can apply to their practical life, not just inspiration, And when it comes to wine, sometimes I think the content can just feel like a little unrelatable. Like, well, that's a beautiful picture of a vineyard. Maybe that's an interesting fact about your soil or your wine, but I can't really apply it. Whereas it sounds like you took an approach of like, hey, here's information that you can really actually turn around and utilize in your real life.
Yeah, 100%. So that's kind of one bucket that does really well. And then the other that I think on its face seems like it might not do as well based on everything I've described is sort of my cult classic series talking about these sort of smaller, really special producers. Those have done exceptionally well. I was doing them every week for like 6 months. It just got kind of tired. I'm going to be returning to them. But it does really well on Substack still where I'm still doing them. And on its face, you wouldn't necessarily think that would be as widely appealing just because I'm talking about these like wine producers for wine nerds. Like these are the wines that sommeliers are really talking about that people are bringing to tasting groups where they get really into wine. But I think it's appealing for two reasons. One, because it sort of makes up people feel like there's someone on the inside kind of like looking out for them and reporting back. Like this is a bit of a stretch, but you see that with something like Mode Operandi. Like the reason their trunk shows do so well is because you feel like you have someone sitting like in the front lines of fashion shows and then reporting back to you of like, hey, you can buy this. People would have previously felt very left out of that. So there's that. I think the other thing is it really plays on this idea of like craftsmanship or your purchases and consumption being an extension of your identity. So, we see like a huge trend. I pay a lot of attention to trends in fashion and beauty and look at a lot of fashion and beauty content and brand strategists just because I really think they're so far ahead of the wine industry, if I'm being totally honest. Like, we see this trend of people moving away from these big ticket luxury bags that everyone has and actually seeking out these sort of smaller emerging brands, emerging designers, craftsmen across the world as a way of expressing their individual taste, their discernment. And wine can also be a part of that. And so I kind of play off of that with the Cult Classic series. And that has done really well as well. It's also just been really rewarding to see all of these people who I think were primed just in their values and their behaviors to like these kinds of producers get exposed to them and get really excited about them.
Totally. And it's storytelling too, which, kind of a fundamental piece of marketing, right? Having these unique stories that are memorable and that really bring a brand to life. But I think what you said about the Cult Classic series reminds me that you're curating too this selection, like you said, of these producers that are what you see on every shelf, not what on every table, but things that a tastemaker really knows about, right? To give people that insider's knowledge, like you said, just similar to a fashion curator. So I really love that approach. That's awesome. Thank you for kind of taking us through the different lenses and your approach. So now talk to us a little bit about what you're doing online and brought it to real life. I had the pleasure of meeting you in person back in, gosh, I don't know, May, June, like time's flying, but at a great event you hosted in Greenpoint at Lovebirds with Mark. And it was fantastic and got to meet a lot of your community. So tell our listeners just a little bit more about what you're doing now with your events in person.
Yeah, so events are very much in like pilot mode, I would say. This is newer, so I wouldn't say like what I've done so far is entirely representative of what I would imagine my full strategy will be, in a year or two. But it really just came organically. I think one of the things that's helped me build a community is I just interact with them constantly. Like I really do. My response times are a little longer than I'd like them to be nowadays, but like I really do respond to every DM and comment that I get. It's getting a little harder, but I enjoy it. And then I have a very active group chat. And when I started the group chat, people just started jumping in and saying like, hey, I'm in New York. Does anyone want to get together? I'm in London. Does anyone want to do a tasting group? And kind of started gathering these like local chapters, the most active ones, which doesn't surprise me because this is my largest community concentration, are both in New York and London, but there have been others around the world as well. And so I started seeing like, oh, okay, people really do want to get together. But again, it's been very much in pilot mode. So New York was kind of a test of like, how many people are I just wanted to meet as many of my community members as possible in person, really, like just put a face to a name. I mean, I guess people see my face online, but put a non-virtual face to a name and see how many people actually wanted to show up. So that was kind of a bigger party. You got to taste a few different wines, but really it was just meant to be like a fun thing to try it out. And it went very well. I mean, tickets booked up the same afternoon, and I think everyone had a ton of fun. I actually had like a bunch of people come up to me after and say like, I met this cool girl or guy and we're going on a date next week. Like that was like 3 different people. It was great. I think people made a ton of new friends, so that was great. The London event that I was personally at was a more intimate dinner. It was like a 12-person dinner at 67 Pall Mall. Everyone brought a different wine. We did sort of a paired dinner. That was, again, a ton of fun. And then people have been doing their own local gatherings, kind of led by, people like James in New York or Gregoire in London, who have been awesome. And I think what I'm seeing is that, people just really want to meet other cool people. I think the challenge with a lot of like the membership club boom, for example, is it's not coalesced around any sort of like niche or interest. So you just end up with like a bunch of people you have no idea whether you're going to relate to. But people really want new friends. So I think, especially people who are interested in what they're interested in are probably around the same age. My demographic is really like 25 to 45. It's pretty specific. So I think people really want to meet each other. People really enjoy sharing knowledge. Like I see that in my group chat. People really like asking for and sharing recommendations. So I think that like things that involve people bringing bottles that they're excited about to share. Like I saw that really kind of light people up in London, which was very cool. And I think the other big thing, and I would say like I think my community so far is like somewhat immune to this just because the most engaged people like are talking constantly in the group chat. And I think, we're kind of at a size where like it's pretty likely everyone's going to like each other. But there are so many demands on people's time right now. So as I start expanding into events, I don't want to just take it for granted that people want to meet each other. I really want to give them an experience that makes them feel like, okay, this is worth paying X amount because, you have to cover costs. This is worth paying X amount and spending my Friday evening with a bunch of strangers that I'm not 100% sure I'm going to like, even though I probably will, because it is that special of an experience. And I think when I'm approaching events like that, especially, I just ran a survey on my community and, everyone does pretty well for themselves professionally. They're pretty high earning. So when you're dealing with that kind of demographic, it becomes less about like how expensive or luxurious something is and much more about like, can I get access to this elsewhere? So I want to start thinking about events that
are there going to be bottles I can't ever, I'm never able to access, or people or talent or education knowledge? Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. It's like, what value are you bringing into that event experience while still keeping it, authentic to you, to your community also? And I think that's a really strategic and smart way. And I'm so excited to see what you come up with. And I can't wait to come to some of the next events. I actually ran into one of your followers who I met at one of your event a couple weeks ago, like literally at a bar. I looked at him and we're like, wait, were you at a Coors event? So it's like so cool. Like he lives in my friend's building. It was just, there's that like just serendipity of people from, let's say, similar age, we're in Brooklyn, right? All coming together and seeing each other and just building community. It makes you feel like, oh wow, I know someone's like at the bar and they live in my friend's building and just, that cool connection. And then he's like, oh, I'll come to your event August 2nd. Yeah, just that nice sharing. So I'm really, really excited to see you branch out into the event space and see really what that brings. It's super, super exciting.
Thank you. I'm excited for it too. They've been fun so far.
Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about Italian wine specifically. Since we're here on the Italian podcast, we could talk forever. But as we start getting to our time, tell us a little bit about your thoughts right now, on the Italian wine category. What is maybe trending for you? What are you interested in? What are you seeing your community excited about with Italian wine?
Yeah. So I will say, I think, again, I'm going to keep using the term psychographic because that's really more what it is, even though it does coalesce around a very specific age bracket. They're pretty specific. Like, I don't know if this is going to apply to, like, by volume, the US market more broadly, but it's a very valuable graphic to have for any producer. So I would say, like, it's less about categories. Like, I think my community is pretty open to any type of category, like to a degree that's actually kind of surprising to me. Like any new producer, any new category, it has way more to do with whether they end up, this is ideal, this is not possible in all circumstances, but whether they feel some sort of personal connection to the producer. So, and this applies to really everything outside of Italian wine too. Like if they're able to like go travel to the region and meet someone that they think is really cool that makes the wine, or like if they go to an event where the winemaker is actually present in New York or LA, that tends to make the wine much more appealing to them. The other thing is just the story and the winemaking. Like, is it a real story of like craftsmanship or legacy or innovation or this crazy winemaker like pushing the boundaries of what wine can do that gets them really excited? That doesn't have to be one thing. It could be something that's really pushing boundaries or something that's really maintaining like the most ancient traditions possible. It just needs to be something that feels unique and has a real narrative to it. So, and also something that, I think that is the case for a lot of the smaller producers. I think if it's a larger one, like I think Ferrari does a good job at this, like something that is still good. Like I think for any product, the product just has to be good. Like it has to taste good. But I think for like a larger company that might not have the same sort of like poetic story, something that feels aligned with their lifestyle. Like again, I think Ferrari does a really good job at this. Like I believe they sponsor F1 because they're literally like every time someone wins an F1 race, they're like spraying Ferrari all over each other. So again, my demographic, psychographic, like high earning professional 25 to 45-year-olds in New York, LA, London who travel quite a bit. They're really into F1 these days. I am too. It's really fun. It's a great way to see the world and hang out with your friends and go to cool events. So like either I think personal connection, great if possible. Another way to do that would be like building really cool hospitality experiences in the vineyard that attract people over there. Interesting story in some way, shape, or form, and something very distinctive about them that makes you want to kind of share that information and be like, hey, I bought this producer and this producer does this and here's what it signals about me, or something that aligns with their lifestyle in a way that's exciting to them. But it could theoretically be applicable to anyone, but like I can't say about my community, for example, like, Prosecco is doing really well. I don't think it's that simple with them. I think it's a different set of values and behaviors. Yeah.
But that makes sense. And I think what you said is still really interesting in that, like, it's more about how the brand is positioned, whether you're becoming memorable or sticky for your story, for a partnership you're doing that's really exciting and interesting and reaching the right audience, or an experience, like you said, that's super memorable. So that all makes total sense. And I think are some really good, tangible takeaways for our listeners who might be on the producer side to be thinking about, who am I partnering with? Who are they reaching with their audience? What's making my brand kind of stick in their minds too? So all super, super valuable. Well, we could definitely keep talking so much longer, but as we wind down, I'll do my rapid fire 3 questions that we do at the end of every episode. So if you can do your best to answer just in a couple sentences. First question, what is your number one tip for mastering the U.S. wine market?
Hone in on your psychographic. I think people focus too much on demographic.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good one. Number 2, what would something that you might have told your younger, I know you're still young, but younger self about working in the wine industry?
Yeah, I mean, I started a year and a half ago.
You're, ahead of yourself a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I think this applies in general. You shouldn't try to be everything to everyone.
I love that. Thank you for being so concise. Finally, you travel a lot. We all do in this industry. What is one of your favorite travel hacks?
Don't check a bag.
Absolutely. Get the biggest carry-on you can, like me.
Yeah, exactly. You would be so, okay, I just have to brag for a second. My last trip in my carry-on, I managed to fit hairdryer, hair curler, 4 pairs of shoes, 3 handbags, a week's worth of different outfits, 4 different workout outfits, all toiletries, a camera stand,
Wow.
and carry-on. Yeah, thank you.
Oh my God. Amazing. What suitcase?
It was away.
And away. All right. Amazing. Well, I am very impressed. Pilar, thank you again so much for joining us. How can our listeners who aren't already following you follow on with what you're up to?
You guys can find me on Instagram, TikTok, or Substack. I will say I focus much more on Instagram and Substack. So if you want to actually interact with me, those are the better platforms for sure. But they're all the same handle. Bar Pilar. So bar literally spelled like a wine bar. And then Pilar. My name is, I feel like I overcomplicated that. It's Bar Pilar with 2 R's at the end.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Am, for joining us today.
Of course.
Thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned each week for new episodes of Masterclass US Wine Market with me, Juliana Colangelo. And remember, if you've enjoyed today's show, hit the like and follow buttons wherever you get your podcasts.